All right, everyone, welcome back. This is going to be part two, third attempt. Hopefully YouTube captures this for the third time. What you currently see up on the screen is the completed version of the file that hopefully by the end of the video you will have. Moving forward, what we're going to do, like I said, is use a rectangle to cut out these positive and negative notches. And use the shape builder tool, and we're going to group a couple shapes. So I'm going to undo most of these steps, as you can see here. Hopefully we can end up with an appropriate amount of shapes that reflect kind of where we were by the end of the first video. Okay, so at this point, your video at the end of part one should kind of left you where you see the artwork now. If you don't have this rectangle, we're going to need this rectangle. So to create it, if you click the rectangle tool and just click and release and give it a width of 0.25 and then you give it a height of 0.5 and press enter or OK, you will create the rectangle that we're going to need for our notches. This being my third recording, hopefully this is more streamlined. First thing we're going to do is duplicate this. This is one side of the building, the right side. We're going to create the left side. So we are going to hold Alt with the selection tool and we're going to drag a second copy out. And then we're going to right click on the second copy and we're going to go to the transform menu and we are going to reflect it. And we're going to reflect it in a vertical fashion. With preview turned on, you can kind of see what it's going to do when it's going to be applied. So with preview on, you'll see an opposite. When you say OK, we have an opposite duplicate. Okay, so we're going to line this up at the front of the building here. We're going to line this one up at the front of the building here. So everything is lined up. They have a common base. And they have a common height at the top. We're going to take our rectangle and we're going to grab it by the center. We're going to snap it to a position on the front left side of your building. If your square or rectangle is in the back, you can right click and go to arrange and bring it to the front. You should see that it overlaps here. We want it exactly in the middle because remember the cardboard we're cutting is 1/8 of an inch thick, so this middle point will cut in exactly 1/8 of an inch. It's much more convenient. So we're going to select this tool or this shape, and with the selection tool on, we're going to hold Alt and we're going to drag the center point down onto the center of the line and have these two overlapping in the midpoint of the rectangle. Okay, these are going to be notches. So we're going to hold shift when you select the first one. Now you have two of them selected. And now hold Alt and we're going to drag this horizontally across. Pay attention to the smart guides to make sure that they're perfectly aligned. As you can see, I have a horizontal pink line and a vertical pink line that shows that they're snapped at those points. Yours might be green because you might have an older version of Illustrator. So now I'm going to let go of my mouse and I'll have my duplicate. I'm going to do the exact same thing for these two as well. So I'm just going to hold Alt, pay attention to making sure where I snap in terms of alignment. This is critical to making sure your building fits together when it's actually cut out. So now that I have those there, okay, I'm going to keep the positives and remove the negatives. So we're going to select these all, grab the shape builder tool. Remember, these are going to be the positives, so we're going to click and drag across all those regions and it's going to join them together. I'm going to do it again over here. So if you missed that first one, here's the second one. We group select, we grab the shape builder tool, we click and drag over the regions that intersect and it becomes one shape. We're going to do the opposite over here. We're going to click and drag this big compound shape. And now we are going to subtract from the outside and hold Alt. And now click and drag and we're going to remove that. We're going to click and drag, we're going to move that. We're going to click and drag and remove this. And I'm holding Alt this entire time. And we're going to click and drag and remove that. So now my positives line up with my negatives because I use the same rectangle. I'm going to use a little bit of logic behind wanted 1/2 inch tabs that stick in and out 1/8 of an inch on each side. So that's why I used a 1/4 for my half split. So now we're going to do the back and then we're going to do a roof plane. So if I drag this down here, get it out of the way, I'm going to drag this over here because we're going to do the back now, and drag this over here. Everything is lined up. We're going to do the same process, but with one tab because it's a smaller surface. Grab the middle, snap it, put it somewhere where it looks good, right in the middle. Select it, hold Alt, drag a second copy out, pay attention to making sure alignment happens. Do it again. Do it again. And then we're going to group select. Let's start with the negative this time. I'm going to hold Alt, subtract, hold Alt, subtract by clicking and dragging. Now I'm going to do the positive. Oops. Shape builder, drag the positive. I'm not holding Alt this time. I'm just adding this geometry. This would be much harder to do if you had to just draw line by line, right? Shape Builder is a great tool. So at this point, the front of my building's done, the back of my building's done. The only thing about my front is I don't really have a rectangle that represents like the opening of the lean-to. So I'm just going to kind of drag this in, an approximation, and then I'm going to grab the center and try to center it where the smart guides tell me. And now I'm just going to highlight all of it and group it. Control G will group it, or if you right click on your selection, you can group them that way. That way when we move this around, everything is good. So we'll put this one here, this one here, this one here. As you can see, they fit together perfectly. We don't want them on top of each other in the way that the laser will be cutting two lines in one location. Separated like this is perfect. Lastly, we want to make sure our roof plane is overhanging all four edges on the top of our roof. So we know that the roof plane needs to be longer than this slope is. So I'm just going to, with the white arrow, click one point, just one. As you can see, it's blue, it's highlighted, it's filled in. I'm going to hold Shift, grab this point, and since this is a broken line, if you have that, you can grab this third point. But I'm going to copy, Control C, paste. This is just a reference, as you can see here. If you take the rotation tool and just rotate it by clicking the selection tool and putting your mouse on the corner, you can rotate this so it's vertical. And that is going to be, our rectangle needs to be taller than that line starting here. See how my rectangle's taller now? And then I need to go out a little wider too. I don't know how much wider visually, but I know what I want it to be is wider than this line. This is the front of the building. So we want the overhang to be wider than that. So as long as the rectangle is bigger than that in both directions, we should be in good shape, right? So same scenario, we wanted the rectangle to be taller than this line and wider than this line. And I don't have a specific overhang in mind, so this measurement doesn't matter as long as it's bigger than. Don't make it look like a graduation hat. That would kind of look silly. But at this point, this rectangle, we can say, would be a good overhang for this roof, right? The only thing we don't have is the bottom, and we don't need the bottom at this point because we're just kind of using this as a vehicle to teach you how to create artwork in Illustrator. And at this point, you're just going to do Save As, give it a name. I'm going to put mine on the desktop. It's called Lean-To. And if you have multiple versions, I recommend a CS3. If you're in my classroom, CS3 will work in the laser. If you're using like a later version, like 2020 like me, save it as a CS3, and it should eliminate any technical issues over at the laser. But this file is ready to be cut out, and it should only take about 25 seconds to cut this out. Okay, so the next experience will be in person, one-on-one, when it comes to actually cutting this file out. But this is what you need in order to do it.